And yes, the up and down trends that social media marketers must know. And we're trying to finish 2020 strong here as we close out and go into 2021. And so we want to try to look at the way things have developed, give you guys the tools in order to try to finish the year strong, head into a strong 2021. That's the objective. And while we have you here, small little sales pitch. We do have this great event coming up next week already. Kind of crazy. We've been working on this for a while. Socialbakers Engage Worldwide 2020. The value of experience. I mean, it goes a long ways, no matter what kind of specific part of marketing you're talking about. In this event, 3 days, all online. Get registered with the QR code that you see right there. Socialbakers.com/engage will take you there. We've got Q&As on the blog with some of our speakers. Going to be lots of interesting content there. So just our little pitch. Hopefully you guys can join us for that. So who are we? I've been doing the talking so far. My name is Taylor, content marketing specialist here at Socialbakers, coming to you from the office here in Prague. And with me, two excellent colleagues. Amelie, if you could start by telling us a little about yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining in this afternoon or morning or whatever time it is where you are. I'm in the product marketing team at Socialbakers here, and I'm really working on aligning our message across the global market.
And Sarma?
Hi, everyone. My name's Sarma. I'm the social media specialist at Socialbakers. So I'm playing the field, posting everything, answering to all your comments and messages. So even after the webinar, we can stay in touch via the Socialbakers official platforms or accounts all over social media.
Yeah, if anyone caught our Facebook Live the other day, you may have seen myself and Sarma also on there. If you've ever communicated with Socialbakers over social media, good chance that Sarma was on the other side of that. And Amelie, just excellent with our product marketing. Every time we've got something new that we want to tell you about, very detailed. You can find her writing on the blog. And just we're excited to spend a little time together and spend it with you, hopefully learn a little and have some fun today. So you girls ready to jump into it?
We were born ready, I think.
All right, so just again, anyone who wants to share your experience or ask us questions while we're going, I ask you to please change your chat function to send it to all panelists and attendees, just so that all of the attendees can see your question. We will save some time towards the end for a Q&A, but if you've got questions pertinent to what we're talking about while we're going, we also want to address those as we can. So what we're going to talk about today, Amelie, do you want to kind of take us through this?
Yeah, sure. So we kind of like have a agenda that's split into 3 parts. So first, we're going to look at the social ads and really trying to understand where and how the money is being spent by the biggest brands. Then we're going to dive into the other side, organic engagement, to really see how consumer behavior shifted online and what kind of trends marketers are prioritizing due to those shifts. And we're going to hop into influencer marketing to really dive in a bit into latest influencer trends.
And these are, kind of the main categories of the report, the trends report that we put out each quarter. But you'll find different data each time you dig in, and that's part of what we try to do is make sense of what that all says. So a quick poll here, and again, to people, drop this in the chat with your answer. So, did your marketing results pick up in Q3? Was Q3 a good one for you? So is it A, all green numbers, it's beautiful, couldn't be better. B, slower than expected, but still doing, okay. Or C, let us get back to you. We're still trying to figure that out.
How was it on our own Socialbakers accounts, Taylor? Can you give us some insights there?
Certainly a good, fair question there. I would say that we're somewhere in between kind of the A and B, perhaps. I think an important thing, even for people answering or just anyone to think about too, is are your marketing results, your benchmarks there, are they pre-coronavirus, or did you adjust them and now you're comparing there? Because some people never adjusted kind of what they were going for based on the coronavirus. And so if you're falling short, well, I mean, isn't that to be expected? You know, if you didn't kind of lower that goal to what seems more reasonable at the time. So some people maybe not hitting their numbers, but still performing well, all things considered. And I think we probably fit somewhere in there. You know, we're certainly happy with where things are at, and you know, with our merger with Astute, I believe that was this quarter. Time, you know, loses all things, but that was
Yeah,
still
it was September. It was September.
Yeah, you know, so an exciting time for us, but you know, I think things could always be better. So what have we seen in the chat? What's the most common answer?
Yeah, the chat is kind of like agreeing with us. So there's lots of A and Bs, but we have a fair point from Francis saying that we should have put D there as well, saying not at all. So
well, I mean, C, we're still trying to figure it out, is maybe the nice way to say, yeah, it's not going well.
Yeah, but no, there's a lot of A and B in there as well.
All right. So our first section there, and you know, that's kind of the point too. It's like, even if things are going decently well, you always want to learn more, but then especially if you're struggling, you reach out for insights and you try to connect with people. And that's what we want to do here today. Not only offer you the insights that we have, but also maybe you find people in the chat and you just kind of, you know, marketers should be helping to strengthen each other, I think. And so that's one of the things we're going to try to do today. So the advertising section, you know, this is a big one that we monitored throughout the year, global ad spend. And looking at Q over Q, so where it was at the end of Q2 2020 to where it was at the end of Q3, 56% jump in global ad spend. Good news, right?
Definitely, and I mean it's quite interesting to see that that it was pretty much across the board, right? I mean, especially obviously in Northern America, where we can also see then the dip from end of Q2, which was probably related with the ad boycott. But then, to be honest, things picked up again quite quickly, right? You have the dip, but it's like, you know, okay, we have all that extra budget that we didn't spend the last month, so let's push it out.
Yeah, to your point. Sorry, just to highlight that one. Yeah, the big jump down, that canyon for Northern America, that was the Blackout Tuesday, where everything was focused on one day in early June, but then it immediately jumped back up. And then the other kind of fall there was in July for the ad boycott. But as you see there, it just bounced back up to even higher numbers. Sorry, Sarma, to cut you off.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that seeing the growth in whichever area, I think right now, that is kind of connected with ad spend or just money or just spending money in general, it's also very it brings an optimistic view to the future, because a lot of times we see that businesses are hurting and yeah, the economies are suffering. But if we look at ad spend, then we can at least like rest assured that in some areas business is still going pretty solidly.
Yeah, it does, you know, it may seem strange to look at, you know, ad spend, like more money being spent, and then we'll get into it, some costs rising as being a good thing. But I think, Sarma, to your point, it's just a sign that, okay, we can continue to do business here. Like that things are not as dire for all of us as it may initially seem. So just sort of that, you know, somewhat return to normalcy that I think this shows a sign of. That is, you know, a positive.
True. Sorry, one quick thing from the audience. Yeah. We have Gaina asking about Middle East info. So Gaina, please get in touch. We do have the info. It's not directly in the report separated out, but I'm sure Taylor, the data team, will be able to help out there, right?
Exactly. Anybody trying to get more information about their specific industry or region, follow up. You're going to receive, and I should have said this off the top too, you will receive a copy of the recording of this webinar, the slide deck, and then to that email is the best place to respond with specific questions that you have. The reason is just you start to lose sight of things when you have too many regions or too many industries on one graph. So we highlight a few, but yes, reach out, reply to that correspondence that you'll get tomorrow, and we will find the data that you're looking for. All right, jumping ahead to the industry ad spend. Similar story here, you know, with the overall jump. Sarma, what do you see here that interests you?
Well, obviously, e-commerce, as we know, is probably the one industry that has been booming this whole year. For me personally, it's interesting to look at also the ad spend for accommodation, because as we discussed in the live, we did last week, then accommodation definitely is the industry that is proving that you have to spend money to make money. So it's kind of interesting to see that it's pretty much stable. You know, there are some dips, but they're definitely less severe than the ones we saw for other industries.
The one thing I would counter on that is just when you do look, because accommodation, it is so much lower, and so it may not look like a big dip, but that one in March initially, I mean, it was, I think, more than 100%, or sorry, not more than 100% down, but it like more than 50% went down, like 75% decrease there initially for them. It was quite impactful, but to your point, their spending is so much lower than some of the other industries that it does look like it didn't affect them quite as much. But they got hit big in March, which makes sense. You know, you look at some of the other ones here, FMCG food, with some of their spike early there, kind of in the summer, and that makes complete sense, right? You know, pivoting to delivery services or takeaway windows, or just being more of kind of the only option when restaurants close down. And so the ad spend jumping there makes sense to me, I think. Amelie, anything you want to add on this one?
No, I mean, it's you covered most of the points, really. I mean, yeah, the most interesting one I find as well is if you're not just looking at the individual months, but if you look at a bigger picture, the e-commerce spending increasing like over 50% year on year, really showing that it's not just a temporary growth. It's really just here to stay, it looks like.
Right. I think that's a good point. That's one of the things that, I mean, it already kind of was increasing. This is part of the digital transformation that was already in place, Absolutely. But that probably accelerated with the coronavirus. And so now that's just going to be building bigger and bigger. All right, jumping ahead. So looking at ad spend overall for 2019 versus 2020. And again, you see that really Q3, kind of August, September, October, jumping up there. That to me is just a sign of health, basically, that things are okay right now. This to me is a good sign. Do you guys take anything else away from it?
I would just totally agree with what you said. And it's just interesting also to look at the dynamics and to compare it year over year, just to see how much different the flow of the year was. And here it will definitely be interesting to see how we end the year, because obviously the Christmas season, the pre-holiday shopping, it takes a big toll on the ad market and marketing in general. So it definitely will be interesting to look how strong 2020 looks compared to 2019.
Yeah, we've got a pretty sharp increase there, you know, with our 2020 line through Q3 heading into Q4. My prediction is that it continues going up in Q4. Do you guys agree or disagree?
Yeah, I think it's pretty likely that it will continue, as Harma said, because of the holiday season coming up, right? And I guess in a lot of countries as well, brick and mortar shops being closed, people are going to buy Christmas gifts online. So it's very likely that the ad spend will increase there as well.
Yeah, exactly. Marketing teams are just shifting budgets because nowadays it doesn't really make sense to put up posters in your stores or buy outdoor advertisement space, because simply no one would see it. And so now we just see that the ad spend is moving to digital, and it makes sense. It really does make a lot of sense.
Taylor, we have a good question from the audience. Whitney is asking, what percentage of ad spend was during the seasonal election? Can you give some insights on there?
Well, I guess part of that depends on how you're defining the season of the election, right? Because I assume at least that they're talking about the U.S. election.
I would think so, yeah. Yeah,
and the only issue I have there is like 10 different people are going to sort of define the season differently. I think really, if you look at probably start of the summer through November, that could fairly be, and you could extend it further than that, but I think once spend probably really showed more of an impact, that would be a fair kind of timeline. And if you look at, you know, our graph here from June up through the end of Q3, and that was exactly in line with the big growth. And in fact, maybe that's something to take into account. So maybe, Q4, I think we all agree the spending is going to increase, but the rate at which it increases may be significantly lower than it would indicate here, potentially because of that election money. It's a theory. I don't know.
Yeah, good point.
Jumping ahead, I mentioned before some of the, not only do we see ad spend increase, but costs increase, which in general, not a great thing, but here just kind of showing the health of the overall industry. I think it can be seen as a positive. Sarma, what do you see here with the global cost per click?
Well, it makes sense that it increases if more and more people are investing in the digital sales, because digital ads, because there's a lot of competition, and if this competition continues to grow, then we can see in the holiday season in 2019, it was still much higher than it is right now. So we probably can anticipate some growing there. Good question about the North American market. We can see that the CPC has also increased. And yeah, good point that we have to consider that the North American market is a bit more specific this year because of the election and everything around that. So again, will be very interesting to keep an eye on these stats as we move into November and December as well.
Mm-hmm. We talk about kind of the increases here, and yet keep in mind, CPC, the global average, still at the end of Q3 2020, a little bit lower, 4.8% lower than it had been at the end of Q3 2019. So even though we're up from where we were in kind of the spring and summer, which is a good, still relatively some value to be found, because if you look at the year-over-year trends, and to Sarma's point, what is Q4 exactly going to look like if we keep it specifically with Northern America this year? I'm not sure. I don't know that it can have sort of the traditional holiday flow that we've come to expect. Maybe this election really did kind of mess with the figures, but that's something we'll have to find out in Q4. And just to kind of back up the point of the strength of Facebook overall, and we talked about the ad spend returning there very quickly after some of these boycotts. Facebook's Q3 revenue report just backs up kind of the anecdotal evidence that we've seen of just a very strong year for the platform. People kind of, no matter what happens, basically, advertisers return to the platform eventually, and it usually doesn't take them very long. But yeah, just a behemoth, just kind of backing up what we already know there, but some strong growth in Q3 from Facebook. Now drilling down a little more on some of the specific feeds. So here we're looking at spend by placement, and this is the main feed for Instagram and Facebook. Facebook's the blue line at the top. And this has kind of been a continuing trend, especially when you stretch it out, looking at since January 2019, it just keeps dipping down. And I don't personally draw too many big conclusions from this, in large part because I think a lot of that spend, it's staying within the family of platforms. It's just maybe going to different placements. However, it still is interesting to note that the main news feed does continue to kind of tick down a little bit each quarter. What do you guys think? Amelie, any main takeaways from this?
Yeah, I mean, the question is as well if this is due to people manually selecting to spend less on the feed, or if this is the algorithm, as you said, maybe the algorithm pushing different formats as well. So it'd be interesting to understand, maybe from the audience, do you see that? Are you having that as a strategy as well to kind of like decrease the feed and spend more on alternative formats?
Yeah, and that to me is just an interesting question. Do you leave it up to the algorithm to make that decision for you, or do you prefer to have the oversight in order to manage those things manually? We've heard from marketers on both sides of that before, but I don't personally have a great gauge for sort of what's more common or more popular. I don't know if you guys do.
Sarma, how are we doing it at Socialbakers?
Oh, it will probably be a better question to our ads team. fortunately enough, the social media manager, Socialbakers, is not a lone warrior that does everything across all platforms. But I would say that we do a good deal of testing around the new formats and just seeing like what works better for which campaign strategies. And this is also something that I would suggest everyone doing, because it's just a great opportunity to kind of touch the waters and see what brings the biggest return of investment that probably is unique for the Facebook kind of ad family, or just digital ads in general, that you can really test everything out and get answers really, really fast, and just see what works, what doesn't work, and operate everything just with one click.
Yeah, we say spend is being distributed to different placements. Well, what are those placements? Here's kind of a closer look at this. Facebook feed still dominant. Like I said, it ticks down, but it's still, together with Instagram feed, makes up more than 3/4 of overall ad spend. But stories, Instagram stories, that's one that's been growing recently. Instagram Explore, kind of a pet placement of mine, been monitoring that ever since it became eligible for ad placement. I believe it was August 2019. God, that seems like so long ago now. But it is now up to about 2.6%, which you say, that's not a whole lot. Well, it went from 0 and kind of slowly climbed its way up. And so that one I'm particularly interested in. Okay, is that just the platform pushing it because it's new and people, who aren't on top of it, just going along with it and saying that's fine? Or are marketers really seeking out Instagram Explorer and finding some results there, and that's why it's growing? That one's interesting to me. But what of these kind of jump out to you guys, big or small?
Yeah, I don't know. I think what we can see clearly is that Instagram is gaining more and more importance overall. And I guess even like with some other formats, it will be interesting how this chart will look like if Instagram will eventually decide or not decide if they will monetize Reels as well, or IGTV. So that should be interesting as well to see the developments potentially there.
Just a matter of time for Reels, right? I mean, we all expect that's the way that's going.
Absolutely, yeah. And Francis in the chat also says that he hopes that they do monetize Reels as well.
Yeah, I guess that's one, because I maybe don't stay up with the day-to-day as much as someone like you, Sarma. Like, is there a concrete plan for that step, or is it just understood that eventually that will probably happen?
I think everyone just is kind of on the same page, because that's also how they have rolled out previous features and previous ad placements. First, they build like a solid kind of usership, if that's a word, and then they go the next step and do the monetizing. We saw that with IGTV as well, and yeah, the same with the videos, and now we can put money on in-stream video ads. So I think it's just a logical step, and how it has looked until now.
All right. So yeah, just kind of looking at this is an example of the Instagram Explore, like I had talked about, but the Explore page is also where you can find Reels. Usually, kind of right big at the top, and then also throughout as you go scrolling. And so that's going to be a big one, I think, whenever that eventually happens. But then just jumping ahead here, another kind of looking at cost per click in relation to click-through rate, looking at Facebook and Instagram. This one kind of just steady as she goes with click-through rate, no matter what happens, usually doesn't deviate a whole lot. That's kind of been the case with this particular chart every time we look at it. But what jumps out to you guys? Sarma, start with you. Anything you want to highlight?
It's just very reassuring that the click-through rate stays steady, because especially when we had this trends report during the first week of the pandemic, it was very, very soothing to see that the click-through rate is impacted as much. So it just kind of proves that there's never a bad time to invest, I guess.
Amelie, you agree?
Yeah, no, I think that's really the most important take on here, that yeah, no matter what happens and no matter how yeah, the whole world, how chaotic the whole world looks like, people are still clicking through those ads.
All right, and again, a reminder to people, you will receive all of these documents, the recording of the webinar, the slide deck, but also this webinar is based on our Q3 trends report, and you can go download that right now on the website if you like. You'll also get a link to it in the follow-up email, but some data that you won't see today is included in that report as well, so please go check that out. A couple more advertising. So Instagram feed costs decrease 20%. But Sarma, you've kind of highlighted a potential value placement on here, right?
I think it was the next slide, actually, because this is the cost per click and cost per mil.
Well, right, but it's related to.
But it's
to
yeah,
the next one,
but it's yeah, it's related that we can see the differences between the ad placements and kind of the graphs that we see. They're not aligned in each of the graphs, so it kind of shows that maybe not everyone is testing them out to the extent that they can find value in the specific ad placement. We'll see it in more detail in the next slide, but it's a constant reminder that yeah, the different ad placements exist. And here you can see that, okay, yeah, the Facebook feed has the best click-through rate, but the next in line is the Facebook in-stream videos, but we don't see enough ad spend there. So if there's any takeaway for you guys from this webinar, I would say is this particular slide. Of course, if more people will start using the in-stream videos or video feeds, place their ads in the video feeds on Facebook, that might shift. Maybe the click-through rates would change, but as we saw in the couple of slides before, click-through rate is pretty steady. So even if there are changes, they will not be major. So for me, the weird part is that just these graphs, they don't match. Like the hierarchy is not the same. If you can see in the first graph, it's like first, second, third, and then the last ones. Then the sequence is completely opposite on the bottom graph with the click-through rate.
Right, and just to back that up, these are looking at the top 5 by relative ad spend, and yes, Facebook feed dominant as it should be based on its click-through rate and everything it does. But yeah, there's value with that in-stream video Facebook. Amelie, anything you want to add here before we move on?
No, let's move on to the next one.
All right. So ad reach here. So grew 130% year over year in Northern America. I'll just open the floor here for Amelie and then Sarma. What do you guys see here? What's interesting to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible really to see that, you know, while we already think like in countries specifically like Northern America where, you know, where it's so saturated, you would think that still the reach can grow even higher, meaning that, you know, people are spending more time online, maybe even some new users. So I think it's quite impressive and yeah, like positive outlook as well for the future.
Yeah, I would totally agree. And just saying that it kind of also shows how habits have changed during the pandemic, that people do spend more time online browsing, and the wonderful joy of window shopping has also been more or less taken away from us. So it just means that maybe people are more prone to click on these ads, to just explore and see what happens, and then the algorithm just gives more and more and more ads because we're a bit more willing to accept them, I think, because we're not exposed to so many different other types of yeah, not only ads but just visuals and yeah, and everything like that.
Yeah, I think that's actually an interesting idea that I haven't thought about there, Sarma, of just the stimuli that you're used to seeing when you go out every day, whether it's advertising or kind of other things. Without that, then maybe you somehow are making up for it with some of the scrolling that you're doing, and ad reach can sort of benefit from that. Maybe I think there's something to that. That's interesting. And then here, just kind of backing up, Facebook monthly active users just continues to grow, 1.82 billion there, 12% increase year over year. Yeah, it's here to stay. Nothing revelatory there, just machine working basically as it's designed to there, just continuing to grow and grow. All right, jumping into organic engagement now. One of our favorites right here. Sarma, I'll tee this up to you. What are we seeing right here on this graph?
Yeah, this is my favorite slide of all time, and we have this slide for a couple of trends reports now. And the bubble for interactions on Facebook, it just grows, it gets smaller and smaller, and the one for Instagram just grows bigger and bigger. And I think this is definitely not something to be afraid of. The only thing that it's really saying is that you shouldn't put targets for organic interactions on Facebook. The target should be focused maybe somewhere else, because it's visible that is simply not the area for Facebook. We all know that Facebook is great for traffic, for example, for traffic to your website, while Instagram might be lacking in this. So I think this graph is just a perfect representation that each platform has its purpose, or brings a value to the whole marketing strategy. Because a couple of years ago, this was not as visible, and you could basically get along with posting the exact same copy, the exact same content across the board, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you name it, and you would get like decent results. But now it just proves that you have to know the ins and outs of the platform to really make the most of it.
Yeah, there's no one size fits all approach, is there?
Exactly. And it's just interesting to see, the interactions. But if we looked at organic traffic, for example, that we can get from Facebook versus Instagram, it will be a completely opposite story.
And Sarma, we have a good question coming in from the audience. I mean, we are B2B as well, and Amanda is asking, do you think this applies for B2B companies, for example, in the financial industry as well?
That is a good question. Of course, like all of the trends that like the general trends that we show on the slides here, they are the general trends. They're not 100% truth to everyone. But we are a B2B company where we're not in finance, but I can totally see that if on Instagram our interactions can keep on growing and we can keep on growing, then Facebook is pretty limited. Like there's a threshold on Facebook that you can kind of achieve without putting any money behind your posts, without boosting them. It's just how the algorithm works. It's just how the platform is built. So I would say that in general terms, it should also apply to other companies, especially B2B, where maybe Facebook and Instagram aren't even Facebook and Instagram aren't even the target platforms. Maybe LinkedIn is a bit more specific, or simply some industries, again, as it might be with finances, are not as interaction provoking. Maybe comments, but maybe not. It's not something that you like. And another interesting thing that I would actually like to add here, it also depends on which country you are active in, if it's a worldwide company, because we actually found some stats, and if you follow us on social, you will see that we published them in the last couple of weeks, that some nationalities or in some countries, it's simply the people are just not liking, they're just not commenting, because it's kind of the cultural differences. So there's so much to take into consideration when you're really evaluating the campaigns that you're doing or the posts that you're putting out. It's a science, trust me, guys. People who tell me that social media is so easy and so straightforward, it's not.
Yeah, I would encourage that commenter to follow up with the message that they receive with all these materials and ask about their specific region or industry that they want to look at. Because yeah, this is the top 50 biggest brands on both of those. So maybe not, the insights here maybe not directly applicable to your industry, but we can find some of that data for you. So please follow up with the message that you receive, and our data team can find what helps for you. But I think that was a great point, Sarma, to kind of leave this slide on, which is that, use the platforms for what they can do. Don't look at this and say, oh, well, we shouldn't post on Facebook because we don't get any interactions. No, just don't expect organic interactions there, or understand, well, our audience is designed more for LinkedIn. And so our audience is more LinkedIn. And so that's what our content needs to match more. And that's where we need to go. So really, to me, the takeaway is just understand the specific platform, and you can make it work for you. Each one has something to offer. It's just making sure that you understand what you're going for. So yeah, but shifting patterns, I forget who said it, but we were talking a little earlier about just people's behavior changing and different things. And this just kind of shows, percent of time that fans have spent online, mostly, according to our data, kind of gone back to what it was pre-coronavirus, not quite. But one thing that's definitely changed is sort of the time that people are online. So we've seen certainly a lot earlier logging on. And the one theory I had on the Facebook Live about this is we don't know whether that's people getting up earlier or people who have stayed up later. We don't have it quite drilled down to that, but that's one sort of interesting takeaway. Anything else you guys want to highlight on this one?
Yeah, it's a good point, actually. As you said, we don't know if it's people staying up later or getting up earlier, but what we know is that it's definitely insomnia, right? Because being up at 5 a.m. should not be normal, I think. But yeah, no, it's interesting to see. I mean, another theory is that people don't have to commute to work, right? So so maybe they do have some extra spare time in the morning, which they instead would spend on the bus or getting changed. And dressed up and all that, and now they can just put on some comfy wear and jump on the couch and do half an hour Facebook check before they even start working. So yeah, it's quite interesting to see, and will be interesting if this trend continues to grow, continues to evolve like that, or if this is really like a, let's say, pandemic related development.
But guys, imagine if we looked at the statistics for last week, for example.
Well, yeah, that was an exceptional week, even in an exceptional year, I would say.
Totally. And I think it also kind of proves how global events can influence a lot. And I can tell that for the Socialbakers platforms, initially in March, April, we could see a bit more reach because more people were simply going online and checking all the developments about obviously the situation with the pandemic, but we didn't necessarily see more interactions because obviously their purpose of being online is not reading about marketing. Like I at least hope marketing doesn't keep people up at night. So it's also about just really following the trends and maybe not posting as much, not so beyond the kind of the bad, not how to say, like, so your brand would simply not appear tone deaf because people are consuming the social media for completely different reasons than to be exposed to, I don't know, ads or how-to guides or whatever else.
Yep, make sure that your content reflects, what's going on in the world, and make sure that you double check the schedule of your tweets to make sure that they're not a week late, as we may have seen with some examples lately. Need to speed through a few here, but we look at evolution of relative post interactions. So this is on a relative scale, Instagram and Facebook. Facebook's the blue one here. We saw a huge spike beginning of coronavirus, seemingly with people just kind of going there for news and sort of the initial reactions, what's closed, what's the latest, kind of all that. And then it settles into what's mostly normal. They're kind of in that 40 to 60% range for most of the rest of the year. Meanwhile, Instagram, 80 to 100% sort of like the click-through rate percentage we saw earlier, just steady as she goes. Anything you guys want to add on this one?
No, I think Sarma summarized it pretty well, that people are spending time on Facebook, not necessarily to even just to interact with marketing companies, but yeah, people are going there, especially during this time, to get their news, to check on their families and friends and people that they are in touch with over Facebook. Whereas Instagram is almost kind of like this release where people go just constantly to get their inspiration from, and not so much to get updated.
Yeah, no time sensitive news maybe, or yeah, just it is how it is.
A lot less time sensitive news, at least for sure, on that platform. Yeah, and then we look at one of my personal favorites, because this is something, and we'll get into kind of the change in the trend here, but something we saw early in the pandemic was an increase in Facebook Live. And based on the performance, so these are Q3 numbers, Facebook Live did double the interactions of regular video. It was great for a lot of people. However, as we're going to see in a slide or two, fewer Facebook Lives going out these days. But what do you guys, Amelie, we'll start with you. What do you see on here that jumps out at you?
Yeah, no, I think it's just really, really promising. And as Sarma said before, that lives are really good opportunity to go and try it out. And yeah, I guess that's a kind of like main take from my side. Sarma, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And I'm curious about the slide that Taylor is promising to us, but again, these are just like global trends. I can tell from my own experience that an Instagram account I managed a while back, for example, carousel posts were actually like worse performing than just images, and yeah, videos were like down the line as well. So always take these stats with a grain of salt, because they might not be 100% accurate representation of your specific accounts. It might be something very niche, or just what your audience likes, or what you started the account off with. But definitely, if you see some changes that are not visible in your results, is just another push to try different things out, because the main thing about social media is just like trial and error. The platforms change constantly, the algorithm unfortunately changes as well, so you just have to be always on your toes and always adapting.
Yeah, Sarma, you don't need to give us specific numbers, but looking at the Instagram performance here, carousel at the top, image in the middle, video at the bottom. You told us at the previous company, but offhand, Socialbakers, what do we kind of see? Does it line up with this, where carousel is the top performing, or is it different?
Yeah, I would say it is like that. It's not 100% sure. It's not that, if we post a carousel, it will be a record-breaking post. But I think it has to do with the fact that if it's a carousel post, then it means that there are multiple images from the same series, or they tell a story and something like that. So it's just like, it's a great opportunity to make things a bit more exciting. Also, if people have to swipe, then there's the chance that there's the opportunity that you keep their attention for a longer time. So you might as well get that double tap. It's just, yeah, it opens the door or two.
We have one good comment coming in from one of our attendees asking about TikTok, and if TikTok will be included in any upcoming social media research. So one of the great things I can recommend you to join the Engage conference that Taylor mentioned in the very beginning, where we will have someone from TikTok speaking as well. And of course, because we are also very curious, we ask them to come with a lot of like data and insights from their side. So that would be the really good point for you to get more insights on TikTok specifically.
It's a great point there. And that is next week, November 18th to 20th, socialbakers.com/engage. Link also at the end of this presentation, and you'll receive it in the follow-up. Speed through. So here we see Twitter video actually higher share of video to the overall post than it is on Facebook and Instagram. And Facebook posts and Instagram actually both kind of decreased slightly when looking at compared to where they were sort of beginning of the pandemic. Anything you guys want to hit on here?
It's just still a mystery for us. That Twitter is still a mystery. So if you guys have any ideas of why actually it could be that Twitter has more brand videos than any other platform, we're open for suggestions. We're still like detectives on the hunt for the correct answer. So if anyone can give us some hints here and there, then we would greatly appreciate. Of course, if we look at this these last couple of months, then it could be connected with the U.S. elections, of course. But for now, for this one, we don't have like a specific answer of why it's growing or what's causing the growth.
Yeah, my guess also, Sarma, would be election related for that spike there. But that's one where I think Q4 will tell us a lot there. But also, yeah, anybody share your theories? What is behind kind of the high Twitter volume there? But I mentioned it before. Facebook Live, it delivers double the interactions of regular video. However, after the kind of a somewhat big spike during coronavirus, Facebook Live usage actually down now below than it was at the end of Q3 2019. What do you guys think here? People just getting tired of it, either the ones producing it or the audience just run out of money? What's some theories as to why this decreased in the last quarter?
I mean, it's quite time. Yeah, it takes quite some time to plan and organize it, doesn't it? So maybe it is really from the marketer's side that they kind of like they tried it out and noticed maybe it doesn't work for their brand, or maybe it's too taking too much time out of their day that they cannot sustain it really. I don't know, Sarma, what's your prediction there?
My thoughts actually are that April, May, June, where we see the biggest spike in the lives, it kind of overlaps the time where at least most European countries, and I saw a lot of Europeans were joining us today here for the webinar, were under like a bit of a stricter lockdown, or we had more restrictions. So obviously all the events that couldn't happen in real life, they were brought to Facebook, or they were just streamed. And then kind of June, July was a bit more relaxed everywhere in the world, in my opinion. So some events could happen. Okay, yeah, maybe not huge festivals or conferences, but still you could go out and enjoy time there. So I think it is just an accurate representation of what the world is going through. And yet again, we have to say that it's very interesting to see what happens in Q4, because at least here in the Czech Republic, we're pretty much stuck at home. So it could be that the Facebook Live videos increase again.
I was just going to say, based on that theory, it sounds like you're thinking maybe we see another uptick here in Q4 to get it maybe ahead of where it was again last year.
That would definitely be my prediction. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Taylor, how was it from Socialbakers side? Did we also kind of increasingly push lives during this year of the pandemic?
Sarma, correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like we didn't do more than we had before. We've always kind of had a somewhat regular schedule of Facebook Lives, and I feel like webinars maybe have increased, but Facebook Live, to me, it at least feels like it's about the same, or maybe actually even a little bit less than we did before.
I think March, April, May, kind of also overlapping with the same graph that we just saw. It could be that we did a bit more, but again, have to say that June, July are vacation months. So it was also a bit more difficult to find a slot for the lives in our schedule, simply just because even people are not going far from their homes. They're still taking time off, and you should take your time off.
All right, so these are a couple that we're not going to comment on very much. Just want to show you that we've got them in here. They're also included in the trends report if you download that full thing. But just talking about the comparison of video length to performance, and looking at both this and the next slide, showing the reach and the interactions based on the length. Start with you, Sarma. Just anything you want to highlight from either of these two slides before we move on and head towards influencers?
Yeah, for me, a lot of people are talking that short form content is the future, or the present and the future. But here we have to take into consideration the fact that the reach is also affected by the Facebook algorithm. And it's just how Facebook prioritizes videos. Because I remember a couple of years back, when you started uploading videos to Facebook, it came with a small list of check marks, so what you have to do to get the most reach for your video. And one of them was to have videos at least 2-3 minutes long, because those supposedly bring in the most interactions. And I know social media managers watching and listening right now will say that nobody watches long videos. If you get over 15 seconds, you're really lucky to get that view. But that's the thing, we're talking about reach and about the priority in the algorithm. So it's kind of two sides of a coin. It's kind of different stories as well if we look at it. Yeah, it's great for reach, but if we looked at view times, that would be a different story.
Yeah, and we have had the average view time in a previous report. I believe it was Q1 2020. It's real short. It was something like 4 or 5 seconds, I think.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, and so that's definitely lines up.
And we have two more insights coming from the audience.
Sure.
So one is both of them are around Twitter videos. So we have one more I guess theory from Ronnie, who says that most brands are using parallel content across platforms, and mostly videos, thereby ignoring the fact that Twitter performs better with polls and engaging questions. So that might also be a reason why we have such high numbers for Twitter, because they're just cross-posting the content. So that could be something. And then one question from the attendee as well about Twitter videos. So Sarma, I think this is directed to you and the suggestion on Facebook. So for Twitter, are short videos about 10 seconds still the recommended length?
Well, it depends. As with everything, if it's a really engaging video, people will watch it through the end. But yeah, from an objective social media manager's perspective, the shorter the better.
All right, jumping ahead, this is one that you guys can see in the report, just talking about interactions across industries. This one really doesn't change a whole lot quarter to quarter, but just something to dive into. Engagement rate by region. This one was interesting just to kind of see how different things on the platforms affected, where, you know, in one country, interactions go up a lot on Instagram, down a lot on Facebook. I found that interesting, and just kind of the different ways that the platforms were used. Anything you guys want to highlight on this particular one?
Yeah, I don't know. I think what's quite interesting that still a lot of amongst a lot of the countries you can see this really big spikes of Instagram, just kind of showing that Instagram is becoming increasingly important there.
Yep.
And then same thing at industry. And again, you guys will receive all of this. It's also in the full Q3 trends report, which I encourage you to download. And last thing here, we just kind of want to talk a little bit about influencer marketing. So this is looking at the usage of hashtag ad or regional versions of that. So different local spellings and versions. Last year, end of Q3 in September, we saw a big increase, 70% jump just in that 1 month alone, heading into a very strong holiday season. This year, not so much. Overall, Q3, it did increase a little bit, but in September, it actually went down slightly. And I do not think that we're going to see the same type of hump that was created for the holiday season last year. Sarma, agree, disagree? What's sort of behind these influencer figures?
Actually, just the other week, I read the interview or Q&A we have with Sarah Boyd on our blog, and Sarah is, I don't know, I would say I call her like a goddess of influencer marketing. She's super knowledgeable on the topic.
She's also, by the way, again, in speaker at one of the Engage webinars. So
yeah, and her insight, which actually makes a lot of sense, is that this year, just the kind of the focus or the purpose of influencers, especially for big brands, has changed, because big brands are hiring influencers as content creators. So for example, if you're a clothing brand or just whatever brand, you send the product to the influencer, and they take the pictures, and then instead of the influencer publishing these pictures on their channels, they send the pictures for your brand to use. So it's just an interesting thought on the topic. Of course, another thing is that kind of the typical influencer lifestyle was not very possible in 2020, which is going to PR events, traveling, going to cafes, and everything that you kind of stereotype for influencers, and also like the areas that they usually work and promote. So it's just, yeah, it hasn't been an easy year for influencers, but also Sarah's insights, she said that a lot of the talent that she works with, they have actually increased their revenue, like their personal revenue, as an influencer in 2020. So it's not all bad, and maybe this graph just shows half of the picture.
Yeah, that's interesting, because we've heard previously, I think it was even the trends report we did for Q2, and talked to people in the audience who said that cutting, or basically influencer marketing, was the first part of the budget that got cut when they had to kind of tighten their belts and different things. And I heard that from a number of different marketers. And so that to me suggested, part of the reason that this is down or may stay much lower than it was the year before, that just simply, whether it's smart or not, because I think influencers used well can actually be a good way for, on a budget, still to get your message out there, and to potentially even get people driving to your website through different means. But I just think it's one of the first things that people say, oh, that's extraneous, we can get rid of that, or we don't need that.
So to summarize, Taylor, what do you think? Is the age of influencer over?
Is it that? I don't know. No, I think it certainly will adapt, because some of it is, look, people become influencers usually because they strike some type of nerve, or they build enough of an audience, and they're usually creative types. And so what do creative types with a bunch of extra time on their hands do? They just get creative. You find kind of different things that work. You test. It's similar with kind of anything that all of us marketers talk about, test and, go back to the drawing board, try again, try different things. And so I think influencers will be challenged to maybe go in some different directions. But no, I definitely don't think that they are behind us by any means.
And we have one more thing before we go to the takeaways. One more question from the audience, which is about influencers, and how about the practice of boosting influencers' posts via something like paid partnership by XYZ. Is that a good way to advertise a brand? Because it kind of like seems organic.
What do you think, Sarma?
I think it's just one of those things that you have to try out and see how it works for your brand specifically. And it also, it could be that it might not work with all influencers. It's just, I would say it's just one of those things. You try out, you test. If it's horrible results, you scratch it and then you never do it again.
I guess a good thing there is, as well as, if you're doing it via a tool like Socialbakers, there you can very easily see which posts are performing really well and which posts are not performing really well. And you can very easily compare your organic versus your paid data as well, to kind of like see if things are growing organically, or if it's really worth putting your budget behind. And then linking that with something like AI-based performance prediction really helps to understand where to put your money.
All right, and as we wrap up here in the takeaways, I have a very important question for the audience. Looking at this image in the top left, does that look to you like it's from The Price is Right, like it's the big thing that they spin? or does that look like it's from a slot machine? So just chime in with your thoughts on there. Got a little friendly wager with a friend on what that looks like or what it was from.
We're quite clear in the amongst ourselves. Taylor is the only one who thinks that it's the Price is Right. But anyways, just don't want to.
Anyway, so the takeaways, yeah. So advertisers not afraid to spend. We saw the ad spend really jump there and makes 2020 losses or make up for 2020 losses during the holiday season. I think that's the goal for a lot of places that have stabilized. Facebook and Instagram reach grew immensely, larger audiences on the platforms. We saw the numbers from Facebook both growing in revenue, growing in users. That has continued. Social media marketing, extremely resilient. You know, there are worse things in the world, but I do feel for the person who, you know, maybe just put together an outdoor ad campaign that was scheduled to run mid-March or something like that. Like they finally got the billboards and then absolutely no one saw them. You know, so digital social media marketing can pivot, can survive in kind of the current climate much easier than different other areas. And the upcoming holiday season, you know, it's always an important time of the year, always an interesting time of the year as we look at some of these trends. But, you know, probably never more so than this year, as both we talk about, you know, trying to make up for losses earlier in 2020, but just seeing how things like the influencer marketing develop. What does spend overall do? Where is the reach at? Online behaviors, are people going to be traveling as much as they did for the holiday season? How does that impact people's online behaviors and just marketing overall? So some interesting things to think about. Hopefully insightful. As we mentioned, this webinar was based on the Q3 Trends Report. You can download the full thing. We encourage you to do so. It's much appreciated. Data team and us marketers worked hard on it.
Actually, one last question, Taylor, which I almost forgot to address, which was coming earlier about in the advertising section. Maybe you can answer that, or otherwise we will redirect to the data team. So when we calculate click-through rate averages, are we isolating the ads with the clicks ad objective, or how are we calculating the CPR?
I do not know that. Yeah, I don't know that 100% offhand. So that is a good one to follow up with when you get the report sent. Follow up and we can show you. And in fact, I would encourage you to download the full report, and the methodology section is in the back. And so you can check that out. And if your answer is in question from that, then reach out to us. I don't want to give you the wrong answer, so I can't answer that off the top of my head. As we wrap up here, any final questions or any thoughts that you guys want to leave us with? Sarma, I hope you enjoyed yourself today. You're becoming an expert at our webinars and lives and everything.
Yeah, it's just, for me, it was interesting to go through the trends once again, because as the holiday season is approaching, and we discussed multiple times that it's just a very interesting time yet again, because a lot of trends might change dramatically as we move into November and December. So it's just a fun time to be alive and follow marketing.
And Amelie, any final thoughts you have, or any questions from the audience that we need to hit before we go?
No, I think everything seems to be covered so far. And yeah, I mean, I can just agree with Sarma. So it will be interesting to see what's coming, if trends are gonna kind of like develop in similar direction, if you will see really big shifts in Q4 as well during the holiday season. So that will be interesting to explore.
All right. Well, wherever you are in the world, I want to thank you for joining us, whether you're wrapping up your day or just getting started. We really appreciate it. Hopefully it was informative, fun, kind of taught you a few things. And also, again, I encourage you, any questions you have, if we didn't get to them or you just thought of something afterward, please reach out to us after the fact. You can connect with us on LinkedIn there. Follow up to the email you received that will have all of this, the video, the documentation, everything in there. And next week, Socialbakers Engage. We encourage you guys to sign up. Going to be a lot of interesting speakers. As we mentioned, some TikTok data that's only going to be available at the event. A lot of our talks you can download afterward. The TikTok one, you cannot. So you got to be there to check it out. And that'll do it. We really want to thank you guys for joining us. For Amelie, for Sarma, I am Taylor. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks so much, everyone. Stay safe.
Bye.